Tax Day 2015. What are you paying? What are you buying? And whether you are getting your money's worth. This is Special Report. Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Brett Baer. You have a few more hours to get that tax return in the mail or file it online. But Tax Day has become more than just a deadline. It now represents, in the minds of many, the growing overreach of a bloated and wasteful federal government. Washington will collect about $11,000 in tax revenue per person this year, but it will spend more than $12,000 per person. On the more positive side, tax season generates about $300 billion in refunds each year. The average refund is around $2,800. The IRS is conducting fewer audits these days and answering fewer phone calls. Congress has cut more than $1 billion from the agency's budget since 2010. We begin Tax Day coverage with correspondent Peter Ducey.
If you needed help from the IRS today, too bad.
Due to high demand, you may experience longer than usual wait times.
Wait times are sky high on Tax Day 2015, and the IRS chief claims his agency just doesn't have enough cash to help everyone who calls in. And he's blaming budget cuts that came after his employees got caught targeting conservatives. Now, Senate Democrats are sympathizing with John Koskinen's complaint.
Your budget has been cut by 18% since this scandal came up. What is the call wait now for a taxpayer who has a problem? What is the average amount of time they have to wait on the phone because you don't have enough personnel to answer the phones?
At this point, when you get through, if you get through, it's on average would have taken you about 28 to 30 minutes.
Koskinen also explained that enforcing Obamacare requires a lot of manpower. But many lawmakers think the IRS has plenty of money and that its problem is really bad management.
The IRS commissioner simply wants more money to run a larger bureaucracy. Well, in fact, they're not doing the basic work they're supposed to be doing properly.
Others on Capitol Hill are outraged that IRS officials would threaten refund delays and a potential shutdown of operations as ransom until they get more money, especially because they spent generously on things that don't exactly improve the customer service at the Internal Revenue Service. For example, $4.3 million on market research and public opinion polling, $4 million on new office furniture, $8,000 on a stair climber, and thousands more on, quote, decorative and giveaway items like kazoos, plush animals, and Thomas the Tank Engine rubber wristbands for managers' meetings. The IRS is pushing back, saying, quote, many of the spending items the agency has been criticized for date back several years. IRS policies have been overhauled in these areas. But critics say the culture at the tax collector hasn't changed since they got caught, singling out conservatives.
They had the time and energy to destroy emails, just not take your phone call.
Perhaps the most puzzling thing the IRS spent big bucks on were public opinion polls, $4.3 million. Because you ask any taxpayer on the street for their opinion of the IRS, they'll tell you for free. Brett?
Pretty cut and dry. Peter, thank you. A 61-year-old mail carrier from Florida is taking responsibility for this, piloting a gyrocopter onto the lawn of the Capitol building this afternoon in order to advance a liberal cause. Douglas Hughes sent an email to news organizations, including this one, detailing his effort to protest what he calls campaign finance corruption. Hughes says he intended to deliver letters addressed to every member of Congress. He was taken into custody by Capitol Police before he was able to do that. Stocks were up today. The Dow gained 76. The S&P 500 finished ahead 11. The Nasdaq was up 34. According to at least one conservative opinion page, the newest Republican presidential candidate is venturing a bit out of the GOP box when it comes to tax reform. So will the issue of taxes be a winner or a loser for Marco Rubio? Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel takes a look.
2 days after announcing he's running for the White House, Florida Senator Marco Rubio joined with fellow conservative Senator Mike Lee to sell their vision for fixing the tax code.
There will be higher paying jobs. that provide more upward mobility created in the 21st century. The question for Americans is how many of them are going to be created here?
The Rubio-Lee plan would cut the top tax rate for corporations from 38% to 25%, eliminate taxes on capital gains and dividends, and on inherited estates. For individuals or families, it would reduce 7 tax brackets to 2, 35% and 15%, and it would create a new tax credit worth up to $2,500 per child.
Families that are raising future American taxpayers should not be penalized for having those additional costs. And so for them, they're going to send less money to Washington than they otherwise would because they're making an extraordinary contribution to America's future.
The plan has taken heat from the right for not going far enough. For example, the Wall Street Journal editorial page wrote, quote, "The Rubio run. The 43-year-old is strong on foreign policy, less so on taxes."
I'll put them down, I guess, as undecided.
And on the left, Democrats say it would expand the budget deficit because it would take away revenue.
His tax plan that he released is again, just a replication of more of the same tax cuts for the wealthiest, most fortunate Americans.
Lee defended against Democrat criticism.
Anything that enhances freedom and that is pro-family and pro-growth is going to be good for our country and good for our economy.
In New Hampshire, potential 2016 candidate New Jersey Governor Chris Christie pledged to release a plan of his own in the coming weeks.
It's ridiculous that normal, everyday Americans have to file a tax return that's this thick. It's crazy that we have a tax code that's riddled with loopholes and special preferences.
In Ohio Tuesday, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush talked about the need to streamline the most complicated tax code in the world to create growth.
We have $2 trillion of cash overseas because of the cost of bringing it back in.
Offering details of a plan can make you a target, but Rubio says if we've reached a point where laying out what you would do is a hindrance to winning an election, then we are in bad shape. Brett?
Mike, thank you. More on this with the panel. It turns out Hillary Clinton was asked about her use of private email more than 2 years ago while she was still Secretary of State. Her response at the time, ignore the question. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry, covering the Clinton campaign again tonight, says she's taking basically the same approach with all but a few precious softballs in Iowa.
And I am so delighted to be here.
Just weeks after collecting the last of a string of six-figure speaking fees, Hillary Clinton today nodded earnestly as a group of small business owners talked about struggles with tight wages and student debt.
I hope to be that voice and that champion for you and others like you.
And smiled just right as at times she conducted her own Oprah-esque TV talk show at a fruit and vegetable company.
Jennifer, what about your business?
Fitting nicely into her goal of staying tightly on message as her ad team lurked just behind the scenes, getting footage for future campaign ads.
Unfortunately, the deck is still stacked in favor of those at the top, and we need to reshuffle the cards.
Not all Democrats are buying her championing of the middle class after years of coziness with Wall Street in the eyes of the left. Liberal Senator Bernie Sanders weighing his own White House bid, telling a Bloomberg breakfast with reporters today, quote, "Is Hillary Clinton or other candidates prepared to take on the billionaire class? Based on her record, I don't think so."
Great to be here.
Clinton was not pressed on that criticism because she went another day without doing a sit-down interview, only answering questions from the small business owners.
I'll have a lot more to say about this as the campaign goes forward.
Yet she had nothing to say as reporters shouted questions.
Secretary Clinton, why didn't the State Department...
About a letter obtained by Fox News and others that Republican Darrell Issa sent to Clinton and other cabinet secretaries in December 2012, asking if they had used personal email accounts for official business. Clinton never responded then, though aides today said there's nothing new here. Spokesman Nick Merrill declaring, quote, "This was a letter sent to all cabinet agencies, leaked to the press 2 years later at the start of Hillary Clinton's campaign. She followed the letter and the spirit of the law. She has provided all of her work email to the State Department and has asked the State Department to release them publicly as soon as possible." Yet there are still questions about why her personal server was wiped out before Republican Trey Gowdy's special Benghazi committee had a chance to get an independent arbiter to determine if only non-work email was deleted, the subject of an ad by the conservative America Rising PAC that ran here in Iowa during Clinton's visit.
As Secretary Clinton unilaterally decided to wipe her server clean.
Now, after her visit here to Capital City Fruit, Hillary Clinton went behind closed doors to the state capitol in Des Moines, meeting with local lawmakers, try to start lining up endorsements for those critical caucuses here next year. Meanwhile, her next stop next week, of course, is going to be New Hampshire, her staff confirms. Brett?
And there's no hiding that these events are pre-set up. I mean, she's just not walking into these things and seeing these people out of the blue.
No doubt about it. I mean, you saw this story by the Daily Mail late this afternoon. They're claiming that she planted people at a coffee shop yesterday. The campaign is saying they weren't planted. Yes, they set it up, as a lot of campaigns in both parties do, so that she didn't randomly go into a coffee shop. But the point is, they tried to build the broader trip as meeting regular people, when meanwhile, she's not quite meeting a lot of regular people. Brett.
Okay, Ed, thank you. Up next, why President Obama is doing a 180 on congressional involvement in the Iran deal. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 25 in Boston with the second anniversary of the Marathon bombings. A moment of silence. The tolling of church bells and calls for kindness were among the observances. Last week, Johar Tsarnaev was convicted of 30 bombing-related charges. He could face the death penalty. KMSB in Tucson, Arizona, with dash cam footage of a policeman using his squad car to take down a robbery suspect carrying a stolen rifle. Authorities say Mario Valencia had fled a nearby market, was threatening suicide. He's in jail after spending 2 days in the hospital. This is a live look at Houston from our affiliate Fox 26. The big story there tonight, a big delivery. The first set of all-female quintuplets born in the U.S. Danielle and Adam Busby welcomed the 5 baby girls last week. They already have a 4-year-old daughter. Wow. Good luck with sleep. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway. From Special Report, we'll be right back.